Oh, well, let's see who's on
we're
today.
live.
Oh, in my kitchen.
Yep.
Somebody brought me flowers, and I still haven't taken them out of the plastic.
Oh yeah, I was here that day. Yeah.
I gotta get them out of the
Anybody
plastic.
on? Oh, I see
We've got
four.
people. I see John,
Oh,
Nancy,
Nancy.
Steves.
Good morning, Nancy.
Good morning. Oh, look, I still look like I've been asleep.
Yeah, this first thing in the morning isn't good.
Isn't good, is it?
No.
Oh well.
So
These
this,
ladies-
I think, is like the third Wednesday morning in a row it's been raining when we've done this. That
Oh,
I've come in the
really?
rain on Wednesday morning for the video.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, I believe it because I'm thinking, oh, it's raining. I gotta go unlock the door for Twyla so she
Yeah.
doesn't stand in the
Mhm.
rain.
Although I
Good
think I've got it
morning,
figured out now.
everybody. Oh, lots of people on. I like to see all your guys' sleepy faces too, because I'm sure you guys
I know
have
what I
some.
gotta do. I gotta
sleepy
check to see what
faces.
the date is on that next Wednesday.
Okay. So, we see all kinds of pictures of people that are posting their projects that they're working on. It's fun
Some
to
of them
see.
are so neat.
I know, it's fun to see some of the takes on people's blocks, and it's fun to see the colors, and we're enjoying this as much as you guys are enjoying this.
I
So-
love seeing how it's so individual and what everybody
Debbie
likes.
Doyle's still in bed. My husband's still in bed, so if he comes around the corner and opens that door, then it's a good thing the camera's pointing this
You're
way.
right.
Because you don't want to see him first thing in the morning. Okay. So I'm gonna hold this block up. Can you? Because Today's block is an applique block. So we're also gonna give you some other homework from the previous blocks, right? But we are going to give you some applique tips, and a lot of this is open to your creativity because what I'm showing you isn't something that you have to do. You can do, but there's lots of room for
You to personalize it
Yeah.
or do whatever you want,
Yeah.
and there's always the option that if you don't want to applique,
you can piece a block.
you can piece a
because
block.
these are 12.5-inch blocks.
Unfinished, 12 and a half. So any
Unfinished.
quilt block,
There's hundreds of 12.5-inch quilt blocks out there.
free quilt blocks.
So if you guys absolutely have
no desire to try applique.
yes, if you don't want to do applique, just pick a 12.5-inch block unfinished that you have done in the past, or there's lots of free ones online, and put it in place of this.
But we're really hoping that if you've never appliqued,
That
that
this
this
is
is the time you try,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. So here is the block. Can you hold that corner?
I
Too?
can.
I can hold this flower. I didn't put one flower on, and it can go this way, it can go this way, or whatever way you want it to go.
Isn't it cute?
I just picked this applique as a simple starter one. So that is going to be the block that is going in my quilt, but we're going to show you lots of options to do whatever you want to do. So we're going to discuss a few things about it first. Twyla, you want to get in here with me?
Well, you're doing the talking this morning. You
Okay.
go for it till it's my
Well,
turn.
that's
You're
good.
good.
Okay.
You're good.
So, there are 3 different choices in my mind to use as fusible for the backing. So, the first one, oh, I should have shown the snowflake. For those of you doing Christmas, I'm just showing you a snowflake option. So, I sell these snowflakes in the shop for a pair. They're $5. They come with the fusible on the back of them. But if you wanted just to put a 12-inch blue background, you could put some snowflakes in it. So that's a
Or any color background
or any
that
color
goes with
background.
your
Just
quilt,
something
right?
so that the
Mhm.
snowflake shows up. Okay, so Stainless 2 is a great option for backing. Also, Heat and Bond is a great option. And so is Wonder Under. The number is 805 Wonder Under. So the differences, I'm going to explain a few of the differences. The reason I like Wonder Under is because it's, well, number one, it's a bit cheaper. This sells for $5 a meter. The Steam Seam and Heat and Bond sells for like $6.50 a meter, I think. Anyway, another reason I like the Wonder Under is because I find it gums up my needle less.
Okay.
The the steam seam and the heat and bond, you'll get some glue sticking on your needle after you've used it a little bit.
Now there are also needles that you can use.
Yes.
That non-stick needles.
Non-stick needles, but it still builds up.
Does it?
Yeah, it still builds up. So anyway, these are the options. The downfall to Wonder Under is it comes off your pieces harder. It doesn't tear off as easily.
Well,
And
that sucks if you're doing a lot.
yeah, and if you're doing tiny little things. But also you can't reposition this and you can with the steam seam. The steam seam, you can kind of lay it down and you can kind of hold your project up and it usually doesn't fall. Or you can move it around and it doesn't.
So if your needle guns up, would like just
An
alcohol swab clean it off?
wipe
So
it
as long
off.
as you kept some
Yeah.
alcohol swabs there to wipe your needle
Yeah.
once in a while.
I tend to go with Wonder Under because I don't, if it's gumming up my needle that much, what's
What's
it
it
doing
doing
to
to
the
your
inside?
machine?
It's easy to clean off a needle. So,
Good point.
you know, sometimes I tend to, if it's bigger projects, I tend to go with Wonder Under for that reason. But having said that, I've used heat and bond on this one.
So maybe just tell them that there's 3 types of applique. So there's the type that's fusible, right?
Usable.
Then there's what's called needle turn,
Yes.
which is
And-
more of a hand.
Well, I'm going to show.
option,
Yeah,
right?
I'm going to show them an option to use this with needle turn too.
Oh, okay. Good.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's just move on. So the very first thing is you're going to have your pattern that looks like this. So you can trace this onto a plastic template and cut out your plastic template if you'd like to, and then you would always have your pattern with you. Some people collect plastic templates and use them over and over
And
again.
you still have some plastic template?
I do, yep. Or you can just lay your Wonder Under or your steam seam and trace it on.
You can see through it.
You
if
can see through it.
I
So you
think
can
it's showing
trace it
there.
on. Yeah. And that's what I did for this project. I just laid it on and traced it out. Like this. So when you cut it out of your Wonder Under or your steam seam or whatever it is,
So is there a trick to, which side should you be tracing on
you
with
know
your?
what? It really, really doesn't matter because
Okay.
if you're fussy with this, you can pull the paper off of either side. The paper can come off of this side or it can come off of this side.
Oh, okay.
The fusible, you can take either side of the paper off. So
Okay.
it really doesn't matter. I tend to draw on the line side for the seam seam. That's
Okay.
what most people do. But if you do it the other way, it's not a big deal. It's still salvageable. The next thing I like to use when I'm cutting my things are serrated blade scissors. Your fabric will tend to fray less using a serrated. Also, if you're worried about fraying, batik fabric works really well for applique because it
Good
frays
point.
a lot less than cotton. But you can't always get the right color or the right fabric, and so serrated scissors kind of help the edges not fray. So I feel like this is going to be a long video because
That's all right.
Anyway,
We're not in a race.
we're not in a race.
No.
So I just traced on a couple of leaves, and I just wanted to show you.
So do you have any questions popping up here?
Did you see my purple scissors over there, Charlotte? Yeah. I couldn't find my blue ones that I typically use. They're probably in the bottom. These are serrated. So these are serrated and just not as small and pointy.
Yes, and you don't have to use your machine to applique.
Yeah,
A lot of
use
people do
whatever-
hand
yeah,
applique
use
and love
whatever
it.
method you
Yeah.
like. So when you cut around your leaf, don't cut on your line. Cut like a 1/4 of an inch around. Okay? We have scrap fabric here for you to lay this out on. So that's what I would cut out. I'm going to cut out both because I'm going to show you an option here. I'm going to show you a needle turn applique with heat and bond as well.
So this is whether you're doing needle turn or the traditional that you do the
Yeah.
the 1/4 inch seam.
Yep.
Okay.
So the reason being, with that iron, I'm going to get you to hold that so you can look down and I can. Bob's going to take control of the iPad now.
No, pull the thingies.
Oh, pull the thing.
Yes, pull the thingies.
We were both doing the
Oh,
same
boy.
thing.
Okay. I gotta switch you around here, guys.
Okay.
Okay.
So, I'm get rid of this now. So I'm going to take the paper off the back. Some people like to score it with a needle, a straight pin. You can score it and get it out that way, but especially with heat and bond, I just give it a little twist and it comes right off. Okay, so I'm going to lay it there and I'm going to iron it. And I'm going to do both of them.
So there's your little twist.
Yeah. Okay. So I am going to cut around my shape. Now is when I will cut on my line.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so this is where I cut on my line. And the reason you cut now is so that all the glue is melted right out to the edge.
Right.
So just make sure it's melted really well.
But if you were going to do needle turn, would you still cut there, or
Yeah,
would you
I'm gonna
leave
show
your
you.
1/4 inch?
I'm going to show you here in a second.
Can you tell I've never appliqued with fusible, guys? I'm going to do the Lori Holt method.
Okay, so that is ready to
Oops,
lay on my
here she is.
project. Just like these flowers. And then you tear off the back paper. And you know what? I like to lay it on my face.
Why?
Because it sucks the heat right out of it really quickly. It makes it quicker.
Wow.
I always do.
It's like, what is she doing?
I know. It's just a habit. I always go, when it's really warm, because it sucks the heat out really quickly.
Okay.
And then you just lay it on your project, wherever you want it to be. And then you're going to stitch around it, and I'm going to show you how to stitch around it.
So do you just lay it on? You don't use the iron to iron it in place again? Or
Yeah.
what do you do?
I'm going to, once I get that flower on, I'll show you how to iron it.
Okay.
So I just want to go back and show you, because I don't use this method, I just know some people that do. I'm going to go in and cut a whole bunch of cuts.
Oh, right.
Okay, and I'm not going to do it all because I'm going to go in and cut it. And then I'm going to tear my paper off. I did that wrong. And I'm going to roll this under.
Okay.
And it sticks.
Mm-hmm.
But you know what I did wrong? Because I'm not used to doing this method. I should have, I'll go back and do it. I should have cut out right there.
Should have what?
I should have cut it out right on there. I should have cut it right out on the line.
Oh, okay.
And then cut it out so that I would have had, let me redo that. I'm going to redo it just to show you. Pencil. Did we bring a pencil over here? Let me grab a pencil.
There's a pen right by the calendar there by the stove, I think, isn't there?
It's because this is a method I don't typically use. I forgot something here. Well, I can just make any shape. It doesn't have to be.
Right.
Okay.
So I guess my question is,
What's your
if you
question?
want your finished shape to be the size that your pencil mark is, you've got to leave, if you're going to do the needle turn or the turning the edges under, you've got to leave.
I'm going to cut this right out on the line for this one.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because I'm going to put that there.
Oh, then you're going to cut.
Then I'm going to cut. Then I'm going to cut out my seam allowance.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
That's what I did wrong. It's because I haven't used this method. I just wanted to show people because some people don't like to machine applique because they don't like the raw edge.
Mm-hmm.
So the reason you lay it like that first, and then do your cutting, is because then that glue is your guide, right?
Right.
Oops.
Right.
That glue you can see is your guide. And you
Of
just
where you're
push
going to
it,
flop it over
and then you flop it down.
at the edge of the glue.
and it sticks.
And that gives you your finished edge rather than a raw edge
That gives you,
applique. Yeah.
And you can actually see it better on this one, but that's what it does. You just tuck it in.
Yeah.
And then you can just come around and kind of tweak it.
Tweak it.
Tweak it.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
So that's if people don't
The
want that
turned
raw
applique.
edge.
Yeah.
But I have made so many quilts, and I have a quilt on my bed that's like 20 years old that was raw edge applique, and it looks like the first day I ever made it.
Really?
20 years
So it
later,
stands up
it
to
stands
washing.
up to washing. 20 years later, the only
Excellent.
thing wearing out on that quilt is the actual fabric,
Mm-hmm.
from washing it and wearing it. The applique, the raw edge applique, depending on the size stitch you use, is just as stable as
Right.
if it's, but that's my opinion. Everybody's got an opinion, but my quilt proves it to me every day when I see that quilt. It's perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I'm going to pick this up.
I think it's so cute.
I can put this star anywhere, right?
Yeah. So that's the fun
You
part
see
is you
that?
can do.
Like it's stuck, right?
So one thing that you need to
And I
point
can-
out is that the background piece is supposed to finish at 12.5 by 12.5.
Yes.
So some people like to allow on their initial piece, like maybe cut it 13 by 13 because they feel that sometimes during the applique stitching process, it draws in a little bit.
So another thing I want to point out that some people do, so then you just hold it down. See, I just tore that off because I didn't glue that.
Right,
But if I wanted to try it anywhere,
right.
I can try it somewhere, okay? So
Then the other thing you have to remember when you're positioning your design is if you have cut this bigger than your finished size, your design has to allow for the extra that you're going to trim off.
you can't come right up to the edge.
And you also have to have your 1/4 inch seam allowance.
Right.
So just remember that your flower can't go right out close to the edge or whatever, or you're going to be in a mess when you get ready to trim your block.
So another thing that people will do that I don't do, I'm just telling you that things that you can do. Some people find that their machine will bunch up and create bulk when they applique. That all depends on your machine and your stitch. So, but if your machine does that, they will fuse like a fusible stabilizer underneath,
Okay, right.
right? I've never had trouble with mine bulking up because after it's done, I just press it and everything lays flat. Some people want to have a stabilizer on the back of their pieces, and that's great. That's a preference thing, but I've never done it. I've never had trouble with it. The next thing you can choose is how you're going to applique it and with what color thread. I never used to, but I like to use invisible thread now. That's just a preference. And my favorite thread for applique is Superior Threads. I can do a whole project and my thread never breaks. You watch it break today, but typically my thread doesn't break.
It's really nice.
It is nice.
Now, some people will use colored thread and they will color
Change the
coordinate,
color.
change their color for each different color in their applique. Some people like to see a contrast, not for it to blend in. So it's all a personal opinion, isn't it?
Exactly. Some people like to use a blanket stitch. Some people like to use a satin stitch.
Or a zigzag.
Or zigzag or whatever, or just
Yeah.
a top stitch.
Yeah.
Whatever you
You
like
can
to do.
top stitch just close to the edge. You can do whatever.
I like to use a blanket stitch. I always do. Get it over there. And I usually keep it at 2. If I was working on a big project, I would increase it. If I was working on a small project, I would decrease it. But
So
that's
it might
my go-to
pay,
size.
if this is your first time appliquing, to test out some blanket stitches or different zigzags or whatever on a test scrap of fabric and see what size you think is going to look good.
So I like to use an open toe, a clear toe, just so I can see. I like to always make sure that your needle is programmed down. So when you stop, your needle is always in so that you can position your fabric and move your fabric. The number one thing to look at is to make sure that your stitch comes directly across and not angled.
Okay.
So sometimes you have to, I'm just going to stitch a little bit
And
and
do
show
you
you.
prefer your stitch, this side of your stitch, to be out on the background fabric, or do
So,
you try to keep it all on the
I
colored
try
portion?
to keep my stitch mostly, so a zigzag, where's that pen? I'll show you on a piece of paper, it might be easier. So my blanket stitch goes like this, right?
Oops, I gotta find you. There we are.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep.
I like to keep this straight right along the edge of my applique piece. I'd rather have it on top of my
Then on the background.
Yes.
Okay.
I would like to have a butt right up against, ideally, but I would like as close or on your applique piece just to help seal those edges.
Right. Okay. Now zigzag, I think a lot of people, they like their outside point to be on the background because it sort of helps hold down, as it crosses back and forth over it.
I've never,
But
to be
again-
honest, I've never done a zigzag. I like my blanket stitch, and I've never done a satin stitch, but I've seen satin stitch work and it looks beautiful. I have a tip though, I found out about satin stitch that when I get here I'll show you. So,
Yes, Lorraine, you can certainly hand applique.
oh yes,
A lot of people prefer to hand
Yeah.
applique. They find it relaxing and they enjoy that handwork.
yeah. So I like to secure my stitch. You saw my needle go up and down a few times, so I've locked my stitch. When I stop, I'm going to call this my outer and in my innard. I always like to stop when my needle is on the outside of my applique.
Okay.
I never stop when it's on the inside.
Okay.
So I'm going to go along and do a few stitches. And so sometimes you have to pivot and move your piece so that your stitch goes directly straight across. If I hadn't pivoted, my stitch, I can turn my fabric, but my stitch won't be directly a 45-degree stitch across. If that matters to you, then do that. It doesn't typically matter to me because I'm using an invisible thread. So I'm all about speed, and so sometimes I just pivot with my fabric.
I bet they'll be shocked to know you're all about speed.
So see, I've got this tip here, so I'm going to pick up and pivot and come around. But see, I always stop with my needle on the outside. If I had stopped with my needle on the inside, I'll do that just to show you. One thing with invisible thread, it's almost like fish line.
It is.
It is. So I try not to stop and start. I try to start and stop as least as I can. So I'm just going to reach over. I'm just going to get rid of this tail here. I'm going to show you when I come down to the end here. Because I've got invisible thread, it doesn't really matter that I've gone on that black a little bit. It was more important to me not to break my thread and come over here and start again. Just, it's less starting and stopping. I just stopped on the inside there, but.
Now, just as a reminder, do you use your invisible thread in the bobbin?
No, I use a white, thin, pre-wound is what I typically use. They're usually like a 50-60 weight.
I actually, from what I've heard, the invisible thread doesn't work well on bobbins, right?
No, yeah. So I'm going to stop on the inside just to show you. So when I I stopped on the inside. So when I go to start, see where it goes? I'm off my applique.
Yeah.
Right? So that's why you always stop on your outside. So that you always, when you turn around,
It's going to go inside.
it's going on your applique. So always stop with your needle on the outside. So this is what I'm doing. I'm just trying to think. There's something I want to show you if you were doing a satin stitch. Let me get back to the next piece and I think I can show it to you here. If you were doing a satin stitch, and let's pretend this is a corner. If I was doing a satin stitch, the length of my stitch, let's say this is a 1/4 inch long, okay? If I was doing a satin stitch, I would stop 1/4 of an inch before I got to my point.
Right, to account for that.
So that when I started down my next row, I wasn't going over my last satin stitch. I had that opening, that 1/4 inch opening, so that my points weren't bulky in my satin stitch. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Okay. I don't worry about that with my blanket stitch because my blanket stitch is pretty open anyway, and it doesn't really matter. Some people, when they get here with a blanket stitch, some people will go on a corner and do like, I don't know how to explain it because I don't do it. Some people, if they got this corner, I'll draw it. Some people, if they go like this, they got this corner, they'll put an angled stitch. They'll do an angled stitch in here and then keep going.
Right.
Instead of, they'll go to their point and do one angled stitch in. I don't really worry about that, especially with invisible thread, because you can't really see. So you see that I am trying to keep my stitch right along the edge.
Let me get there. There we go, yeah.
Right along the edge and onto here.
So they're asking, can you iron on invisible thread?
Yes, you can on this superior. I'm going to get to the end here. I'm just going to do this flower so that I can take it out and show you how I iron it. Let me just get around here. One petal left.
Now what are you going to do with that black circle?
I'm going to continue and go right around my black circle. So some people would switch using black fabric because invisible thread actually has a smoke that shows less on the black thread fabric. But I just stick to this one color thread, and when I get back to where I started, I'll backtrack and seal it off. There is a smoke that would show less than that, but that doesn't bother me.
I think she has both. She has the clear and the smoke.
So when I called the company about ironing, they said that the benefit to superior threads is some invisible threads will eventually turn yellow in time. Okay. Superior threads won't. And you can iron on superior threads that you can't on a lot. But I'm still a little nervous about it. So when I iron after, you see, like that's pretty flat. I really didn't need a stabilizer in my mind.
No.
And see how flat that lays?
But like you said, it could totally be your machine too, right? So if you find you're having a problem, that would be the answer.
And if I wanted to iron that out, I would always flip my project over and iron it like that.
Or you could always use a scrap piece of fabric over the top and iron through a layer of scrap fabric.
But I've never had any trouble. I have like 50% of my quilts have some type of applique in it, and I've never had any trouble with my thread melting. I mean, I'm cautious with it.
And
by
you wouldn't leave your iron on for 30 seconds or anything in one
see
spot.
See how flat that is?
Looks
like
lovely.
I don't see a need to stabilize that.
No.
It's an extra step and an extra price, an extra fee, like to buy a stabilizer, right?
Yeah. Okay. So that pattern will be added to the Quilt Project page so that you can download that if you want to do that same pattern.
Yep. I'm going to take that camera from you maybe and let you do your talk.
Here we go.
Okay, now we're going to put Twilight on. Because Twilight is going to show you another couple options.
So, just to make it your own quilt, you can do whatever you want.
I have 2 quilts over there that need to be bound. Does anybody want to do it?
You know me, I prefer the Lori Holt method of applique. So this is my block that I've done. And I just wanted you guys to know how simple it can be, that you don't need special templates or whatever. This round white piece was this Ziploc cover that I used for my template because it was the right size that I traced around. And my star was just a star that I actually found just a template of online on Google, or you could find any shape, print it off, whatever you want.
I find children's coloring books are a great place. If you Google
Right.
children's coloring books, you see a
Or
lot of
coloring
basic
pages.
shapes.
Yes, yeah. So you can use anything that you want like that. And then it was just a matter of after I had drawn out my template of my star, I decided I wanted a different color in the center. So I just drew lines on my paper template to those points and then cut that one as well. So this is the Lori Holt method, which I'm not going to go into detail today. There is a video on the page on how to do the Lori Holt method.
We did that a few weeks ago.
I did.
Yeah.
So with Lori Holt, you use an interfacing that you sew to your fabric and then you turn them so that there's no raw edges. Everything is sealed in.
Donna, that's a good point. My superior thread is a polyester and the others are nylon, so that's the reason.
Oh, very good.
Yeah, but I'm cautious with it anyway. I iron
So
on
just
the back.
to show you the difference, I was lazy and didn't get out my FAF, which does my decorative stitches because it wasn't out. So I just used my Juki and I just did straight stitching, a straight stitch along the edge of mine.
Your edges are all turned in, so I mean that's perfectly fine.
It is because my edges are finished because of the Lori Holt technique.
Yep.
So just to give you some options, that there's all the different ways you can personalize it, you can pick things, and you don't have to do the Lori Holt option. If you are doing a Christmas themed quilt and you want to do applique with, you know, the fusible method, you can still find things online to draw on, you know, your applique
Debbie
or
said
whatever.
Christmas books is a good idea because Christmas is out now and there's all kinds of
Right,
nice books.
right.
At the dollar store.
So the other thing is this is handy. Your 12 and a half, your block is supposed to finish at, it's unfinished at 12 and a half. So after you allowed for the extra in cutting on Deb's block or on any block, if you use your 12 and a half inch, you can put it on, you can center it around your design and then just trim to your 12 and a half inch. But this was also a good guide if you were laying out your design like that to see that you're far enough from the edges, right?
So it
When
gives you
you're,
a quarter
before you
inches.
iron everything on. If you have a 12 and a half inch ruler, it just makes it easy to judge how far, because you need to allow that quarter inch seam.
Yep.
For your seam allowance.
Perfect.
So that's this week's block. So your instructions is basically your background square needs to be 12 and a half by 12 and a half when you're all done. So if you want to allow for it shrinking a little bit when you applique, maybe cut it 13 by 13 and then cut it down when you're done. The PDF for printing Deb's design will be posted to the Quilt Project page. We discovered last week that we cannot load PDF to our Facebook business page. So it has to go to the project, the Quilt Project page. So it will be there. And we aren't going to be back next Wednesday. So this is the spell where you have 2 weeks. So we're giving you homework. So the date that we're back is the 17th. So that's 2 weeks from today. So your homework is you have to get your applique block done if you choose to do applique. But remember, any 12 and a half inch block, if you don't want to tackle applique, if you're doing a Christmas themed quilt, there's tons of free blocks online, like Christmas trees.
You could just do a simple morning star or a
You
log
could do
cabin block or
anything
whatever.
to fill in that 12 and a half inch block. So whatever you want to personalize it. So then you also have some more homework. So this is just some random things that you need to get done. It's not going to make sense to you yet, but you need to cut a whole bunch of 1.5 inch squares. Or you can strip piece 1.5 inch strips. We need 4 pieces that are 8 1.5 inch squares. And we need 4 pieces that are 18 1.5
She'll have all
inch
these
squares.
instructions on the page after.
I will. So if you want to do strip piecing and cut them, like you could use 8 different ones and just do 2 sets of 8 and then just add 2 at the top and bottom. They don't all have to be different. You can do whatever you want. If you've got tons of little scraps, left over from what you've been cutting already and you want to utilize some of them, by all means, you just cut your 1.5 inch squares. So you need 4 strips, 18 1.5 inch squares sewn together, and you need 4 strips of 8 1.5 inch squares sewn together. So that's homework, part of your homework. So now.
She's a tough teacher.
I am, you guys. So remember your 56 pinwheel blocks?
Twyla, your hairdo always looks good.
Oh
Jillian
my
says.
word, I hate my hair. Seriously, I do. I hate it. I'm waiting for the day we can be bald. So you remember your 56 pinwheel squares? We have to add some white border to 2 sides of the whole 56 pinwheels.
It doesn't matter what size.
Well, you're going to add a 3.5 inch piece to the bottom and then a 4.5 inch piece to the side. So those are 1.5 by 3.5, 1.5 by 4.5, if your pinwheel blocks squared up to 3.5 inches like they were supposed to. So just as an example, this one underneath, the limey green one, is a 3.5 inch square. The one underneath didn't quite make it to the 3.5 inch square. So now is your time that you can fudge
and still use it.
And still use your pinwheels and still have them very accurate by increasing the width of these 2 strips and then trimming your block to 4.5 inches square. So anybody who panicked about their pinwheels not squaring up to 3.5 inches square, this is your time to fix it. So if your pinwheels are 3.5 inches square, you're cutting 56 of the 1.5 by 3.5 that goes on the bottom of your pinwheel. Then you're cutting 56 of the 1.5 by 4.5 that's going on the right side.
Did you just hold that perfect pinwheel up because it was perfect? Are all your pinwheels that perfect?
No, they're not.
I bet they
Look
are.
at that one. See, that one's not perfect. Look, my points are clear right there on both sides. See? So on the smaller ones, just to give you an idea of how much to cut extra, if your pinwheel is measuring 1/4 inch smaller than what it's supposed to, then you need to add at least 1/4 inch to the width of your piece. And if you want to be good and sure, you could add, a
half inch
and trim it down. You won't need to add any extra to your length, because if you cut it at 3.5, you've got plenty already, right? Because it's not 3.5 if yours didn't square up properly. The same with your 4.5. When you're done, you're squaring to 4.5. So if you cut to 4.5, it should be fine. But if you want to allow extra both ways, you go ahead. But this little one, I would cut this at least 1/4 inch bigger on my width. So instead of 1.5 wide, I would cut it 1 3/4.
Or 1 3/4.
Or even 2 inches, depending.
It just gives you
And
more
then
trimming.
your really simple way to square up is to use a 4.5 inch square ruler when you're done, right? And that makes it simple to get a perfectly 4.5 by 4.5 inch block then when you're done. So you've solved all your squaring up problems by just allowing a little bit extra on your pieces. So that's your homework.
That's it for today, everybody.
So I will get on and get the cutting things posted and get the link to the applique onto the Quilt Project page. And we will see you on the 17th. And I'm just wondering if there's anything else we were supposed to say. I don't think so.
I do still have, today's the last day for the sale. So if you buy 1 meter of Christmas fabric, it's 20% off, 1 meter or more.
If you buy at least a meter, yeah.
Yep. And we also have, there's a few remnants left. They kind of took a kicking, but we have remnants left at 50% off, and all the pre-cuts are 10% off. All the fat quarter bundles, jelly rolls, everything like that.
And aren't you posting?
And yesterday I posted patterns that are on sale, and I posted and told people to call in for the patterns. So some of you missed out because you just messaged and we didn't get to the messages.
Right.
So there's going to be some more patterns posted today, some stray patterns. Karen did some organizing yesterday, and I have an abundance of random single patterns, so we're going to try to clear those out.
So message, preferably, even if we post
No,
pictures.
the
it's
best thing to
better
do is to call.
to call, true, or message.
Yeah.
But we won't. The messages under the post is the
Aren't
last
always
place.
getting. They
Yeah.
aren't always getting seen first. So if you really want something, then it's best to call.
So we will be back on the 17th at 9 o'clock in the morning.
All right.
So you've got lots of homework to keep you busy.
Yes, and I can't wait to see what
So
everybody
don't
does.
sew your pinwheels together. Just get the edges on them.
Yeah, they don't attach.
No, not yet. Okay.
All right,
Very
everybody.
good.
See you later.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for watching.